Termite and pest control. Please stand by for your regularly scheduled broadcast and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to Unleashed with Chewy, presented by our friends over there at Burrell's Termite and Pest Control. The sun's out today, but there will be some rain later on tonight. You might want to go ahead and get out there and enjoy it while you can. Looks like the rest of the week is going to be a little bit rainy as well. But don't worry, we'll be all right. Get out there and enjoy it. But welcome back to Unleashed. This is Volume 8. And we're continuing the experiment that is Unleashed, as it were. And today I couldn't really think of much of anything to talk about, so I decided that we're just going to talk about what I want to talk about. And what was on my mind today, for some reason and no reason in particular, was chromatophores. And if you don't know what a chromatophore, that's fine. It's sort of, they are you know how there's like color changing animals and that kind of thing? That's kind of where they're at. Good afternoon, Brett Crabtree. Thanks for jumping in this morning. I'm just going to be yapping, so this may be a skippable one. But, yeah, I don't know why. Just today, I'll give you an insight to the way my brain works a little bit is like some days you'll just wake up and you don't really think about much of anything. But then there's other days where you wake up and you're like, why do dandelions go through concrete? Or, why does a cloud have a certain shape? What's the, is it pressure? Is it water? Is it changes? What is it that? Why aren't there crystalline cells in more species around the world? We've got animal cells and plant cells, and some cells have crystalline structures, but why not crystalline-based cells? Why are there no silicon-based beings on the planet with that kind of thing? So that's sort of where my head sort of runs. And today, it just so happened to be chromatophores. If you don't know what a chromatophore is a cell in an animal that is responsible for flexible pigmentation. And think the mimic octopus, cuttlefish, chameleons, lots of different kinds of fish have these as well. Have you ever seen those like the cuttlefish who can like change their shape and the color and like even make patterns and textures? And octopi, or not octopi. Actually, that's actually incorrect. It's octopuses. It is not octopi. A lot of people think it's octopi, but it's not. It's because it's based on what is the root word of octopus in general. I forget if it's Greek or Latin or one, but that's actually what dictates the I at the end of that. But it's octopuses who, there's the famous mimic octopus that will go out of its way to act like another creature and that kind of thing. And the concept of an animal changing its color neurologically is something that's just always fascinated me. It's hey Mom jumped in the chat this morning. Don't forget, speaking of the chat, hey, jump in with us on the Hall of Furniture Facebook stream. You can jump over there in the chat and let me know if I've gotten anything wrong or if you had a question about something like that. But we're just exploring this today because I found it fascinating. Now, chromatophores are actually found in many, many kinds of animals, usually on the cold-blooded side. Frogs even have these, but lots of fish, cephalopods, and other things like that have them, and I was just sort of fascinated by them, so I went into a bit of a deep dive on chromatophores and what they are and how they work and that kind of thing. And it would be basically like if you got a tattoo, and that tattoo would flex and change based off of your hormones, your feelings, the environment, and if it was like more advanced, like an octopus or a cephalopod, then there would be systems built around that kind of cell to then induce the changes. Listen, the point being is that it's just an interesting topic, and that's what we're going to actually jump into. So a chromatophore is a cell or clusters of cells that contain pigment and can change how the pigment is displayed. In many animals, especially cephalopods like octopuses, squid, and cuttlefish, each chromatophore is like a tiny elastic pigment controlled by muscle. When the muscle contracts, they open the sac and the color becomes visible. When the muscles relax, the sac shrinks and the color disappears. Each one is microscopic, but animals have thousands and up to millions of these all working together. And they kind of work like a TV. So, you know how like a TV is sort of like a RGB, red, green, blue kind of thing, and they are they sort of change, like your television screen works like that. It works as if you look at it and it creates these three colors to create the array of colors in which you have. Mom says she doesn't care. She's still calling it octopi. That's fine. You can be wrong. You're allowed, but typically the colors are yellows and browns and reds, and then on top of it they have iridophores and luciophores, which are two different things. And the iridophores, they're the ones who are responsible for like greens and blues and metallic colors and working structural colorations, and luciophores help scatter the ambient light and help match it to the brightness of the surroundings. So that way, if you are a more specifically colored creature, if you are in an environment, it would not destroy the display around it, because some of these creatures actually use the cells to blend in. And if you are too perfect of a green, well then that's an issue. So we've got chromatophores, iridophores, and luciophores, and all three are important in basically the color-changing process. But not all animals use these cells the same. The cells themselves, they pop up in different creatures. Chameleons are a good example. Frogs have these, where some frogs will go from a green to a brown color based on the temperature of the air. Obviously, the most intense version of this is cephalopods, and cephalopods in general have, instead of having the cells as part of their medium, the medium was the chromatophores. So that's how you get things like cuttlefish, who will use their chromatophores to create dazzling patterns and displays in milliseconds to distract and even hypnotize fish. This is a real thing that's actually been observed before, where a cuttlefish will point out its arms on the front of its face and take lines. It will make lines go across its tentacles, and it will literally hypnotize fish for them to grab. And then further to that point, when they get stressed out, they start to hide. And when you hide, you have to look like something in the environment. And so what researchers started doing is that they would get these cuttlefish and they would put them in an environment that was unnatural. And literally, there's a wonderful little paper that you can go and read, and there's pictures of this. And it is they were basically testing cephalopods, or not cephalopods, but cuttlefish's availability of color change. How specific could they get? And was it purely limited to a natural environment? So they put them in a model bedroom with a checkerboard floor and a little bed and stuff like this. It was basically the least natural place the cuttlefish could be. And the cuttlefish was put in the environment at the correct temperature, salinity, and everything like that. The only problem was it just wasn't a natural environment. And so naturally it gets a little bit stressed. And when it was stressed, when the researchers came back, what happened is that it sat on the floor, and the cuttlefish was literally able to mimic square-shaped structures on its back, almost right angles. It wasn't perfect, but it was extremely close, and something that the cuttlefish's brain did not have basically the mental map for. Joe says, I'm watching too much Jurassic Park, but Jurassic Park didn't even show how cool these things could be, because it's not invisibility. It doesn't bend the light around you in that way. That's more of a chameleon thing, but we're getting there. We're getting there. But chromatophores, again, it's a muscle. So instead of being invisible, think more like a living tattoo, like it's like paint on your skin that you are neurologically influencing to that degree. Now, if you want to do a step down from that, that's where we get things like reptiles, like chameleons, or amphibians, like frogs and stuff like that. But cephalopods in general basically have internal neurological mechanisms and a distributed intelligence. So if you didn't know this, this is hard to explain. So like we'll just say octopus for sake of brevity. An octopus, its brain is its body. So when I say that, what I'm saying is actually for a human, we are sort of an eldritch being comparatively, right? When we think of great beings beyond our own comprehension, we think of things of like Cthulhu. And what is Cthulhu? He's like this gangly chimera of strange cephalopod meets dragon, but still upright and that kind of thing. And the point being is that it's like things that are just opposite of us are sort of strange and mystical and ethereal. Well, that's basically us to a cuttlefish, right? We have an endoskeleton, and our entire central nervous system is controlled by one spot in an organ, and we have like bones and stuff like that. For an octopus, it's a little bit different. The internal molecules or the internal structure of its brain goes through the entire body. So when we think, okay, I need to bend my finger, and we bend our finger. It would be like we wouldn't have to make the decision to do that. The finger would do it itself, to the point to where if you sever an octopus's arm, or the arm gets severed for some reason or other, the arm itself will then be going around and looking for food, and if it gets it, it will try and bring it back to a non-existent mouth. So it's like we're not even on the same ball field biologically. So don't think of it like in terms of humanity. Think of it, it's something beyond our comprehension, literally. There's literal eldritch beings in the water, and we just have to go and find them. But anyway, what surprised me was, for me, I thought this was sort of the tip of the iceberg. I was like, these are the creatures on Earth who have the chromatophores. The other color-changing stuff has actually changed, and it's a little bit different. I was wrong. Turns out that multiple animals have chromatophores, luciophores, and iridophores all at the same time. And what's super fascinating is that, like in nature, you have this sort of base component. Some run with it, some don't, some have it and they don't really use it. Some are situational, more hormonal. And then, of course, you've got the ones where they do a little something funky with it, right? So imagine this, okay? The difference between a chameleon and a sea creature's use of a chromatophore are two different things. When you see a chameleon, it's a terrestrial reptile, it does actively think to choose and change its color. It will produce this, but in a totally different way. And this is kind of the part where it gets super fascinating, because often hormonal changes are actually what lead to a lot of the differences. Sprickens of which, iridophores work similarly to the way feathers do. And feathers, if you didn't know, feathers don't have color. If you ever find a bird feather and you want to try this experiment, put it up to a light, and you will notice that the light goes through it perfectly, especially if you hold it up to the sun. All of the color of it leaves, because the structural integrity of the feather is what actually induces your perception of the color. And what that means is that the color itself is not dependent upon the caloric intake to feed the pigmentation cells, but rather it is using physics to to trick your eye into seeing the color that it is attempting to push. Now, obviously, birds have a wider view of colors than we do, and what birds see versus what we see aren't exactly the same, so we're not really playing the same game here, but that's okay. My point being is luciophores work about exactly the same, using physics to change certain things. But this is where it gets interesting, because the luciophores and the chromatophores and those kinds of things, they all show up in these places. But chameleons in particular made me very, very fascinated, because chameleons don't actually use chromatophores in the way that we use them. So cephalopods use a muscle-controlled pigment sac, which is like a fast-reacting pixel on a body, where, let's say if we used it the same way, I would have a tattoo on my arm, and I could change the shape and even sometimes the texture of it based on a thought input from me to change the thing. What chameleons do, and now listen to this, they use nanocrystalline structures in their skin to control how the light reflects. It is a slower, more physics-based muscle than what the cephalopods are doing. So this is pretty fascinating. So chameleons have 3 layers. They have a layer similar to the cephalopods as well. The top layer contains the yellows, the reds, and the browns. So if you've seen those chameleons that look like rodeo clowns, where they're orange and green and all these other things, this is what's happening. And they're using this as basically like a base paint. And then the middle layer is where their iridophores lie. And now their iridophores contain guanine nanocrystals, tiny, tiny microscopic reflective plates that create a lattice structure. And then the spacing between the crystals is actually what changes, not the crystals themselves. So they move the crystals across their body to change the way the light interacts on top of them. And then when you perceive the changes, it's because it has been moved directly to induce the color in which is induced. Tighter spacings is like the blues and the greens and like those wild, vibrant colors that like a chameleon gets. And the looser spacings are when you get those like deep red, bright candy red colors that you can get off of some chameleons. And again, obviously not all chameleons do the same, but they are using cellular changes and tension in their skin to adjust the way that they look. And it's like a microscopic mirror system that all dance, and the light dancing on its skin is what produces this new color. However, they do use this for basically communication to alert other chameleons or other like prey, predators, those kinds of things. It also, if it's like very stressed out or if it's calm, these all are also detectable based on their color as well. And they also do this for temper regulation. So a colder chameleon will actually have darker skin tones because of that reason. So bright, wild colors are like dominance and mating displays, and two chameleons who are competing for territory may have a color off where they're trying to be more and more vibrant, and again, it goes into mating, because the more ability you have to do this, usually the healthier you are, the more calories you can expend, and so therefore you are a better mating partner. This is how the mating displays work. It's a communication tool, right? Darker tones are usually when they get very stressed out, or if they are trying to absorb heat. You've seen the lizards basking. Well, they can absorb extra heat by just changing the nature of their skin. And then the neutral greens and browns are a restful state. So like if you see a chameleon that's passed away, it has that sort of like reptilian green kind of thing. That's what's going on here. And why it feels like crystals are because they act more like soap bubbles in a shimmer, or butterfly wings, or oil slicks in a rainbow. When you see those things on the road and you see something like that, that's what you're seeing. Like those triangular pyramids that people will say, and that's how you actually get the color out of them. Octopuses change their color like they're controlling pixels on a screen. Chameleons change their color by bending the light itself around microscopic crystals on its skin. And again, it's a slower, they are thinking of doing it like it is a neurologically based mechanic where it is an action, it is an input and then an action. But again, it is much more, it's a lot less specific than it is in like a cephalopod or something like that. And I'll tell you some more about some other creatures that actually have chromatophores as well after we go take a break here. We'll be back with more Unleashed, sponsored by our friends over there at Burroughs Termite and Pest Control, right here on ESPN Radio Winchester, 1340, 1069. Stay tuned after these messages.
In honor of April being National Poetry Month, I've prepared a little something for you all. Welcome to the month that's known for its showers. 30 days from now, it will all turn to flowers. But if you're looking for a little more green between now and then, stop by your local lottery retailer for a chance at a win. With new instant games and prizes up to $500K, game-changing fun could be headed your way. This was a message from the Tennessee Lottery. Please do your best to play responsibly.
This is Joe Abraham inviting you to join us every Thankful Thursday on the starting lineup. Chewy and I sit down with Winchester Mayor Sean Crabtree, look ahead to a huge weekend in sports, and take a moment to share what we're thankful for. It's a positive way to roll into the weekend. A little gratitude, a little sports talk, and plenty of fun. Don't miss Thankful Thursday every Thursday morning on the starting lineup.
Why choose More Courtney Funeral Home? Well, they're a fifth-generation funeral home taking care of the people of Franklin County since 1905. They're committed to serving you, dedicated to providing personalized, professional, and compassionate service to help lighten your burden and help you out during these difficult times. More Courtney Funeral Home, 300 First Avenue Northwest in Winchester, 967-2222. More Courtney Funeral Home.
Got a project to tackle or a party to plan? Skip the stress and rent it instead at Reliable Rental in Winchester. From tools and heavy-duty machines to chairs, tables, and event essentials, they've got what you need to get the job done right. Whether it's work or a weekend celebration, Reliable Rental makes it easy. Stop by 2433 Deckard Boulevard in Winchester or check out everything they offer online at ReliableRentalFC.com. Reliable Rental. When you need it, they've got it.
Welcome back to more Unleashed. I found some animals that actually you'd be surprised have some chromatophores on here. Let's see. Andrew jumped in this afternoon saying, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Andrew. Clip Powers jumping in. How are you doing, brother? Chewy says he's obviously overqualified for the station. Not true, not true. I barely put things together. But today I did want to, so honestly, I've run out of ideas to talk about things, so we're just talking about what I find interesting right now. And what I'm finding interesting right now today just happened to be chromatophores. Now, I'm moving on. So like I said, there's lots of different creatures who have these things and who use them. Another one is actually a flounder. Now, flounder is a pretty popular fish if you like fish and chips and you like that kind of thing as well. Those are all options for you. Well, they have them as well. Now, flounder, if you don't know, it's that flat fish that sits on the bottom of and it's got the two little peeking eyes above, and it'll snatch a fish if it goes right above him. So obviously, this is an obvious test case of why having a color-changing ability or an influence of color in your own skin to base more surrounding. I guess that's a better way to put it. Putting it lightly, it's hard to talk about this because it's just such an alien topic. But they can actually perfectly match the sea floor in which they're on. So not all cuttlefish, not all flounder and other flatfish are completely flat or bury themselves in the sand. And one of the things that they do is that they have a reaction to the floor, and they can change it. And they literally disappear into sand, rock, different patterns. So you remember that thing I said with the checkerboard thing? They did this with the flounder. Same thing happened. Then, on top of that, they took the flounder, put it in pitch black darkness, and it was still able to somehow perceive both the texture and the color of the seafloor itself. So sometimes with a lot of these creatures, we're actually not 100% sure how they get to the conclusion of the color that they are wanting to put on, especially like baby cuttlefish. They'll do this. Have you ever seen a baby cuttlefish? It's the cutest little creepy alien baby that you've ever seen in your life. It's this tiny little weird thing, and it's weird and just so small, and it's almost completely see-through. You can see all of its little organs. But the fact that it is so small is that you can see the pigmentation cells. And when a baby cuttlefish gets born, you see them flexing. Same thing with a lot of different octopus species and other cephalopods and things like that. And then they also do very similar flounder techniques, where a baby cuttlefish or something similar will scuttle down into the sand and push sand on top of itself to then hide. And then for some reason, even in pitch black dark, these creatures on the bottom of the seafloor are still able to fully mimic their surroundings, and very successfully. There are many, many different kinds of species of flatfish and flounder. Flounders, and it's funny, though, that flounder is actually one of the most popular dishes in cuisine for fish. A lot of people, like if you enjoy fish and chips and stuff like that, that's usually a high-quality version of that. Is often flounder is usually where people go for that, especially in Britain and stuff like that. So it's like maybe they're not as good as we thought they were, because they're so good at being fish and chips as well. Naturalistically, us aside and removing us from the equation, they do fantastic. It's basically like a fish can out camouflage an octopus by literally looking like a pancake. I don't know if you've ever swam with a flounder before, but it is shocking to say the least, because boy, like, you are just like, you'll be face down looking at the seafloor, and you move past it, and you can literally feel the water being pushed onto you from its movement. Very interesting stuff. Moving on. Tree frogs are another animal that also has these, believe it or not. Tree frogs have chromatophores. And the tree frogs are interesting because what do you usually see a tree frog have? They have sort of the browns and the grays and the greens. Every now and again you'll see like the bright oranges and maybe even a tinge of what looks like blue and stuff like this, where a lot of it, and again, it's a lot of the same ones, but this one is actually slower, where some frogs, it takes over a couple hours to actually change their color. And what does this due to? Well, this is due to many things. Usually temperature, humidity, and stress. So let's say you caught a tree frog, it will start changing colors in its tank, not because it's relaxing or it's enjoying itself, it's because it's stressed out. And so it'll turn from a bright, vibrant green to like a bark brown, or maybe like there were some tree frogs that even have almost a copper shimmer, but that comes from iridophores. Frogs basically have a built-in mood lighting system, where it's less of like they're thinking about needing to change themselves or to adjust to an environment, versus where it's very much like a mood ring, basically, where the temperature, the humidity, and the external factors are actually the reasons why it changes the color that it does. All right. Moving on, seahorses. This is another one. You're seeing if anyone else is noticing a pattern here, yes, it seems to be cold-blooded, and water seems to be involved in a lot of these, or at least, at the very least, humidity. Seahorses can change colors to match corals or seaweeds, and then they have this unique ability, not unique, but unique as in it's an interesting ability, I'll say, to change their texture slightly. Now, there are also kinds of cuttlefish who do this as well. There's an extreme version of it. Basically, the most hardcore version you can get of this color changing thing is where you start having muscles built into your skin to alter the texture. Now, some flounder have this, some seahorses have this, some other fish have this, but in particular, there is a kind of cuttlefish called I think it's called like the flamboyant cuttlefish or something. I forget exactly what it's called, but I've actually seen one of these things before at an aquarium. Unbelievable use of naturalistic principles. I mean, they incorporate the chromatophores and the muscle to extend their camouflage to go beyond just hoping you'll miss them to literally becoming like the object that they're on. Here's the creepy part. So if you watch these, go on YouTube and go watch one of these videos. It's very unsettling how fast it happens, right? They will go underwater, they'll be shooting across, the cameraman will be chasing them, and then it'll make a split-second decision to turn into a rock. And then it'll see that it's still watching it, so it'll go somewhere else, and then it'll be a shell. And when it does this, you will see parts of its skin get pulled up and then flattened. It'll pull itself like an elastic toy to pull skin, to flatten it, to make it look more natural, like a rock or like a shell or something like this. It'll even add grooves on its skin, and it almost looks like a dead leaf in some ways, and not that it's trying to mimic a dead leaf, but the dead leaf is the only thing that I can think to compare it to. So seahorses have this ability too. Now, if you've ever seen a seahorse in real life, I've seen a few seahorses in real life. I've also seen them, and when I say in real life, I mean like actually been in the water with them before. It is almost funny to watch them as a species because they don't really swim as much as it is an aggressive floating with their little back fin that flaps really hard. And they're not very smart creatures either. Some of the most beautiful animals in the world are there's like a kelp-based seahorse where I think they're even called like sea dragons. Some of the most beautiful arrays of mimicry in nature, but they are dumb as a rock. They're not very smart, and they also have that weird pregnancy thing where they do it backwards, but they also have the ability to change their texture slightly, both used for camouflage and courtship. Now, this is the other thing. We're bringing up the mating thing. Well, that's what seahorses like to do. Now, seahorses also mate for life, just like penguins, just like humans a lot of the times, and they get together and they hold on to each. It's very cute and sentimental if you're into that kind of thing, where at night seahorses will hold on to each other's tails so they don't float away from each other in the middle of the night. They usually like to breed under pale moonlight, like a full moon. The seahorses are very, very beautiful romantically, like somehow for such a stupid creature, and maybe that says something about us as humanity who romanticizes things, but they will often mate under a full moon. They will hold each other's tails so they don't float away. It's all very, very romantic stuff if you like that kind of thing for an animal that can barely form thoughts and is almost like primed for extinction. You know how like a panda has, for me, like a panda is a failed species that is being propagated by humanity. Seahorses are like number 2, where they're not necessarily going extinct, but as far as quote unquote like failed as far as evolution goes, 100%. Mom jumped in saying woohoo science Wednesdays. We'll see. But seahorses are just out there doing subtle color changes like they're just redecorating. Anole lizards, not chameleons. Different kind of lizard. Yeah, listen to this. People often confuse these little creatures for chameleons because of their behavior. Now, chameleons have those like little eyeballs that kind of go this way and that way, and they've got like the long tongue thing and the prehensile tail and their creepy little Lego hands. I had a chameleon at one point, and I learned that if you just hand them things, they will just hold them. So I would give him like little Lego lightsabers, and he would like hold them in his hands. You'd put a match in there, and he'd just grab it and hold on to it. Very interesting stuff. They have a little more of a personality than other ones do. But anyway, Anole lizards are another one. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I may not be, but they are not chameleons. But people often confuse them because they change colors pretty similarly as well. Some people even call them fake chameleons because of what they do. But the fake chameleons themselves, it's not as bright and flamboyant as a chameleon is exactly, but what it does do is it does change it based on basically the environment that it's in. And it doesn't use the same crystalline structures, where a lot of these creatures that we're talking about are like hyper evolved species where that is a term. The word hyper evolved does not exist literally. That is me attempting to explain why these creatures have such an advanced use of some of these things, and that's usually what this is. This creature, the Anole lizard, is one of the ones where it's like sort of like just the base tier. He didn't subscribe to the premium tier of that, but these Anole lizards do have chromatophores, but they do not have the color-changing systems that chameleons have, and it is less neurologically based and more situationally based. When they're stressed, they're trying to mate, or they're cold, or they're it's usually that kind of thing where it's not like an active decision. Now, get this. Moving back into the water, we've got salmon and other fish during breeding seasons. Now, if you're a fisherman, especially someone who if you like salmon too, salmon fishing and that kind of thing. I don't know. Are there salmon fishermen? Is that like a thing? Like around here, we've got bass fishermen. And I know there are guys who stick to like one kind of fish. But is salmon fishing a thing, or is that just kind of what bears are? I don't know. Let us know on the Hall Furniture Facebook stream. But as you know, if you've seen the wild transformation that salmon make from that like silvery sort of traditional fish look to the humpbacked, bright red, hook-beaked fish thing that it turns into, that comes from chromatophores. The color change itself is a hormonal-based change because of its mating season. They go back and forth along their breeding patterns and stuff like that. And when they do this, it is almost one of the most extreme physical changes for a mating season ever in any animal, just because of the gnarly, weird behaviors that they also do. And they're also like suicidal, where they get to a certain point and then they just go to die after their spawning season. But going back, pressure, stress, hormone, environmental changes, all those things fall into this, because they go from bright reds and then even greens sometimes, where the chromatophores on the inside of their body are actually controlled by hormones, and it is a full body transformation, as in where a localized event on a body like a cephalopod or a chameleon or something like this is more specific to trying to fit in a certain way or something like that. This is more of a passive change, almost like a werewolf, I guess. I guess Samen's about as close as you could get to having a biological werewolf in a terrestrial animal, or non-terrestrial animal. I mean, if you look at those things before and after, it is disgusting. They're not even the same creature. It's bizarre, but they literally have a glow up. Then, so here's my favorite part: shrimps and crustaceans also have chromatophores. And you're thinking, well, wait a minute, why don't we have chromatophores? And I'm thinking, yeah, why don't we? We need to start getting some of these. I would love to have a tattoo that I could change my mind on. But shrimps also use these, and other crustaceans. They usually change basically after a couple days, where they can go from being completely transparent, like a glass shrimp. You can get these at like pet stores and places like this, to even larger creatures like mantis shrimp with those bright clown-like colors. A lot of the times, these creatures, the chitin on their body is actually completely transparent. And when you have these creatures, it can induce a chemical change on the inside of the chitin that will either produce or mimic or show certain chromatophores to being certain colors. So for shrimp, it actually takes like 15 days before something changes. Some actually match with their coral over time to basically perfectly match the environment that they're in. And then they will also combine chromatophores with the transparency of their body to sort of almost be like... Have you ever seen those paintings where it's layered glass, where they paint one layer and then they layer the glass and then they paint the next layer? It is almost the exact version of that, but done through an ecological lens. I don't even know how to describe these creatures without showing you. I don't know if I have the ability to at the moment, but cuttlefish have some weird cousins. They're called nudibranches. They're called sea slugs, but they don't really look like slugs most of the time, and they're kind of these weird... They don't have brains. They breathe through the same hole. Like, listen, sea slugs and sea pigs and all these kinds of things, they all have these as well. Not color changing rapidly, but they do use chromatophores to subtly adjust tones. And then some of these they're literally called nudibranches, and some of them actually use them as warning signals to other beings to tell them that they're toxic, basically, because they are. And so you will get some nudibranches that are like white and bright orange, and then other ones that are like a weird cucumbery green, and they have like these strange appendages that are attached to them, and they're like neon gummy worms that are designed to kill you. Gobies and other real fish. Oh, okay. Gobies and other small reef fish all have these brightly colored and changing environments. A coral reef is a very dynamic creature, and when I say that, I mean it literally. So a coral reef is like a body. It's like a living thing, where the coral, yes, literally the coral is alive, but it's a dynamically changing thing, and the things that live on it it's almost like a giant colony organism, where you've got the cleaners and you've got the predators, you've got the prey, you've got the things that maintain, you've got, it's all one part, right? Well, they can actually have rapid color shifts to avoid predators, and can easily change to spots to stripes very quickly. And some of the most common use of chromatophores that humanity has ever seen actually come from small reef fish. And usually you don't see them because it's not as much of a dramatic display as some of the cephalopods and other ways like that. So this is just some of the other animals in the animal kingdom that actually use these. And it's surprising that you realize after you read some of these things that you've been seeing this the whole time. Like, you didn't even know about this. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, these things they're everywhere, and then that's how this works. And anyway, I just wanted to share some of the other creatures that I found. There were a few in there that I genuinely had no idea about, like the nudibranches. I did not know had chromatophores. It makes total sense in hindsight, based on their environment, what they are and what they do. But it never occurred to me, because I was always more interested in the more vibrant displays that the other creatures do. And even chameleons, for a long time, I believed that they were just chromatophore based, but they actually use crystals, basically nanocrystal, guanine nanocrystal. You know that stuff that you put in like an energy drink? It's the same stuff, but it's a crystalline structure in their cells, and they pull their cells farther apart to change stuff. Absolute magic, incredible stuff. We got more headed your way after this break. We're going to be taking a quick break here and then be back with more Unleashed, presented by our friends over there at Burrell's Termite and Pest Control.
Day isn't what it used to be. Higher potency products, vaping devices, and edibles can increase the risk of dependence, anxiety, and impaired judgment. Understanding the risks matters. The Franklin County Prevention Coalition provides education and local resources to help our community make informed decisions. When we stay informed, we are stronger together and stronger without it. Learn more at fcpctn.org. This project is funded under a grant contract with the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services.
I'm Kristen Abraham, and at Abraham Art Gallery, we're more than just a place to see great art. We're a place to create, connect, and celebrate. Join us for monthly classes for kids and adults, artist talks, and hands-on events that welcome beginners and collectors alike. Need a unique space for a shower, small gathering, or creative workshop? Our gallery is available for private rentals too. And of course, come browse the latest exhibit. You might just find that perfect piece to take home. Find us on Instagram and Facebook, learn more at abrahamgallery.com, and visit us on the square in downtown Winchester.
Nothing celebrates victory like a good cigar. The starting lineup with Joe and Chewy is presented by Loco in Winchester, home of locally roasted Loco coffee that keeps Franklin County fueled every morning. And win or lose, Loco is the place to relax with premium cigars, craft beer, and natural products that help with sleep and stress. Start your mornings with us and a cup of Loco coffee, and you can celebrate those wins later with a victory cigar. Loco in Winchester, fueling Franklin County mornings.
This is Daryl from Columbus, previously from the Paul Feinbaum Show. I like your show. I've been watching you for years. I like you, but I don't like you. I don't know you like Tennessee or Alabama. I don't know which one you like, but I know you don't like the Auburn Tigers, man.
Willie, thank you. I'm a little bit confused by liking me and not liking me, but you laid out your case very well.
The Paul Feinbaum Show, weekdays at 3 Eastern on the ESPN app and on the SEC network.
This is Unleashed with Chewy, powered by Burrell's Termite and Pest Control on ESPN Radio 1340, 1069, WCDT, Winchester.
Welcome back to Unleashed, presented by Burrell's Termite and Pest Control. Lisa jumped in saying Curious Matter with Chewy or Wonder Lab Wednesdays. I like Wonder Lab Wednesday. Lisa, you got to get in here and start telling us about some of the stuff that the Swimplex is doing and all the stuff that's got coming up during the summer. I got to get you in here, and we'll have a good conversation about that. So, moving on, there's a real reason I brought up chromatophores is because I want to talk about the color blue, but that's coming up a little bit later. That'll be the second hour. Don't worry, you guys will get nice and bored with that one. But I was curious. I wanted to know, why do mammals seem to lack this specific ability as far as color changing patterns and something like that? That seems like a pretty useful thing to have as a human or an ape or other land-dwelling terrestrial mammal. And I found a few reasons why, and it actually sort of fascinated me, where I've realized a few things. So basically, number one, it really comes down to how our skin structure is constructed. Mammals rely on I don't know how to say this. Basically, melanin and pigmentation cells. So when melanin is basically a structure in the cells that's created through a caloric intake. So if you have someone who has a darker skin, or like someone who sits a lot in the sun, those kinds of things, it takes more calories to produce that color than it does other colors, because the cells are calorie dependent. So your diet will also change the way you look sometimes, and we just don't use our skin in the same way that these other animals do. Particularly also because of the fact that we have hair and fur. Lots of fish species don't even have scales. They just have the skin and the cells are there. And so I was curious. I'm like, okay, what's the deal here? What's going on? What are we doing? Why are we changing so much? Well, The UV, basically, pigmentation, skin, fur, that kind of thing is basically what, in the long run, is UV protection. Now, if you've seen other animals who don't use them as much and live in the sun that are reptiles, Komodo dragon's a good example. Reptiles like, archosaurs like crocodiles and alligators and gharials and that kind of thing. But you see they have dark, heavy pigmentation on their backs. That's because it's the UV protection. So the sun interacting with your skin is actually part of the reason why chromatophores are not chosen evolutionarily versus skin that can produce hair and other things on top of it, like scales and other stuff like that. So it produces the pigmentation slowly, and it is a hormonal caloric based change. So this is not something, so like you wouldn't ever have, like if you have pale skin, you can like grit your teeth and puff yourself up to turn yourself pink, but that has nothing to do with the cells and the way your cells are interacting with light. It's just your blood vessels are showing. And so if you were like, breathing really hard and your skin starts to change color, it's not even remotely similar to what's going on. That is the subsurface scattering of blood onto your skin. Or subsurface scattering is where if you put your hand up to a light and you see that color where you can sort of almost looks transparent, maybe sometimes you could see some blood vessels, that's subsurface scattering of light. And it's actually one of the reasons why CGI in movies actually looks kind of plasticky. It's because they actually lack that, where the light it actually penetrates the first couple layers of your skin before it reflects it back. So that's why some people in the light can go from like a very pale to like a pink, or some people who have like a very darker skin color in the like inside turn into like a more of a coffee colored on the outside when they go into the sunlight. It's the exact same thing. So, but that isn't the only reason. So listen to this. There's lots of creatures in the ocean, though, who could probably benefit from this, that are mammals. You've got cephalopods, cetaceans, you've got sea lions and walruses and even polar bears and stuff like that are in the water, not to mention whales and other things like that. Well, direct skin visibility is something that is almost inherently required for the use of chromatophores, and the majority of mammalian species do not have all direct skin availability, and therefore, it cannot be used as a communication tool. So the communication is also the second part of the riddle, where most fish and reptiles and stuff like that either lack the vocal cords able to produce a noise or lack fine motor function to produce noises as well. There are many birds who can like literally make noises, not just with their mouth, but there are birds. There's one animal, I think, that is like known to play an instrument, and it is a bird during mating season. It will fly with a rock in its hand on a hollowed out tree and bang a beat onto the tree to impress the female birds. Very fascinating stuff. Totally besides the point. But it further reinforces the fact that without the need for skin communication, it gets tossed out. But also, mammals sort of solved this problem a little bit differently through behavioral camouflage. This is like your fine motor movements, the hiding, the freezing, the moving, the when people say serpentine, that's half the battle. Fixed colorations, like zebras have stripes, leopards have spots. Many animals like bears in particular, will go through seasonal coats, where like a black bear, like go look at Tennessee Wildlife and look at black bear, and that term is so wrong that there are brown black bears, chestnut black bears, there are blonde black bears, but it's still a black bear. But then a lot of these things, some of them are like even reddish in hair wise, where a lot of these bears will get out there and the temperature will change. If your dog has like a heavier coat during the winter, some of these bears and other mammals will go through coat changes and change the color throughout the seasons. Deer and fawn, when they're little, they have like the little spots. Same idea. But also, this is the big one. This is the main one. If you're ever curious about like why an animal doesn't have a certain tool in its repertoire, it usually comes down to energy and complexity. So, if you're an octopus, you need thousands of controllable pigment units, almost like pixels, neurological wiring to every single one of them and a constant hormonal signaling to them to inflate or deflate the colored sacs. It is an incredible biological investment based on the fuel consumption that you have. And if you are a small creature like this, that number one cannot withhold large amounts of calories and energy as it is, and it is something where you are also limited by your environment through communication, with it being almost purely visual, well, then there Bob's your uncle. But mammals have bigger brains, better temperature regulation, and sustained activity, where a lot of these other creatures sit very still for a very long time, especially lots of different kinds of fish and reptiles and those kinds of things. So they need an easier, more specific way to communicate. Now, also, we do have a weaker version of this. It basically fits the same psychological profile without using the same mechanics. People blushing or going pale when you're scared or flushed when you're hot. These technically are subconscious signaling of emotional and biological equilibrium, as it were, where it doesn't do the same thing a chromatophore does, and it doesn't act the same way a chromatophore does, but it does produce the same kind of information that the chromatophores are really trying to do. At its base, a chromatophore is just an excuse to communicate without a voice, and that's all it is. There's nothing really more beyond what a chromatophore is other than just some mild survival techniques. And we do this as well. We get flushed when we get embarrassed, or we get hot. We go pale when we get sick or feel strange. And these are all very interesting things, but again, it just isn't the same. I just wish I had some chromatophores. I mean, like, you're telling me tomorrow, if you could go to a tattoo parlor and be like, hey, we're going to inject you with these heavy metals, which is what a tattoo is, by the way. If you have tattoos, those are heavy metals that are injected into the subsurface part of your epidermis to produce the color, and it changes the shape. You ever notice how, like, when someone's tattoo is kind of old and it hasn't been touched up in a while, you know why touch-ups have to be done? That's because your immune system is literally attacking the tattoo. It is literally, you can go on the internet and watch the immune system eat away at the heavy metals in a tattoo. Just an interesting thought if you don't have a tattoo or you're thinking about getting one. It genuinely is heavy metals inside of your body that your immune system will be attacking for the rest of your life. Just a small part of that. But now imagine, though, you could have that and you could change the shape. You're like, oh, yeah, I've got SpongeBob today, but tomorrow I'm feeling like Jake from Adventure Time. But those are just some of the examples. That was something that I had on my mind today, and it was sort of a segue into what I wanted to actually talk about. There's an ongoing joke amongst people who know me, and it is that I'm obsessed with the color blue. Not because it's my favorite color. It's not. It's not even close to my favorite color. I actually kind of dislike blue and its prevalence. But there's a reason for that, and I understand why people like it. And we're going to get into that more in the next hour. Stay tuned with us right here on Unleashed with Chewy, presented by our friends over there at Burl's Termite and Pest Control. We got some more absolutely riveting radio headed your way, learning about the color blue and more. Stay tuned with us. We'll be at you. We'll see you again at the top of the hour, next hour. Stay tuned after this.
Time for fresh starts, and that includes your heart health. At Southern Tennessee Cardiology, compassionate expert care is always close to home. Whether you're managing a condition or just staying ahead of your health, their team is here for you every step of the way. This spring, take care of what matters most. Visit Southern Tennessee Cardiology at 2210 Cowan Highway in Winchester, or learn more at southtncardio.com. Southern Tennessee Cardiology, caring for your heart, season after season.
Feeling under the weather? Need a quick checkup or urgent care? Look no further than Complete Express Care in Winchester. Our expert medical team is here to provide fast, reliable care when you need it most. From minor illnesses and injuries to lab tests and x-rays. No appointment necessary. Visit us today at 1211 Dinah Shore Boulevard in Winchester, or call us at 931-967-6669. Complete Express Care. Your health, our priority.
You ever go down the rabbit hole at 2 in the morning and come out questioning everything? That's kind of what it's like listening to Unleashed with Chewy, presented by Burrell's Termite and Pest Control. That's right, this isn't your typical show. We're going to be talking conspiracies, space, movies, science, whatever our brains have got spinning that day. Some days make sense, most definitely don't. Either way, we're going to have a great time. Unleashed with Chewy, weekdays from 2 to 4 on ESPN Radio Winchester.
It's time for a local news break from the 931 Go News Center.
More wet weather is moving through Franklin County today as a cold front brings scattered showers to our region. Rain chances will continue through midday and into mid-afternoon. High temperatures are expected to reach only the upper 60s to low 70s. The rest of the work week looks cooler and drier, with morning lows in the 40s and afternoon highs staying in the upper 60s and low 70s, even with sunshine. There is a slight 20% chance of rain on Friday, midday, and about a 30% chance Saturday morning. The remainder of the weekend looks dry, with temperatures gradually warming near 80 degrees by Monday and Tuesday of next week. In Giles County, investigators with the Sheriff's Office, Pulaski Police Department, and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation executed a search warrant at a residence on Fall River Road. Authorities report seizing approximately 84 grams of fentanyl, about 20 grams of marijuana, 2 firearms, more than $8,000 in cash, drug paraphernalia, and a vehicle. Sheriff Joe Purvis said the operation reflects ongoing efforts to remove dangerous drugs from the community. Kendrick Young Jr. was charged with possession of fentanyl and marijuana with intent to sell, firearm-related offenses, and additional drug charges. Allison Griggs also faces multiple charges, including possession of fentanyl and firearms, during the commission of a dangerous felony. And several Franklin County students are being recognized for outstanding achievements. Hudson Boswell of Franklin County High School won first place in the South Central Region Machining Competition. Also at Franklin County High School, Isaiah Brown was named Student of the Month. And Callie Banks signed to play soccer at Motlow State. In Huntland, middle school softball players Sydney Jackson and Lillian Schultz were selected as all-conference, while Jaden May and Riley Maxwell were named Huntland's Male and Female Athletes of the Year. Maxwell also received the inaugural Roland Tippy Tips FCA Scholarship. For more local updates, visit 931go.com. Stay informed and stay connected to your community with ESPN Radio Winchester.
This is ESPN Radio Winchester, where Franklin County comes to life. From local news and athletics to everything in between, we're proud to bring you the stories that matter right here at home. And it's all made possible by local businesses connecting with real people in our community every single day. When you support them, you support our local coverage. Over 75 years of Franklin County heritage. Want your business to be a part of it? Contact WCDT today. ESPN Radio Winchester. Franklin County plays here.
Spring is a season of renewal, and at High Point Health System with Ascension St. Thomas, your health is always in season. From routine checkups to advanced care, their dedicated team is here to help you feel your best today and every day. Compassionate care backed by the strength of Ascension St. Thomas. This spring, take a moment for your health. Learn more or find a provider at highpointhealthsystem.com. High Point Health System with Ascension St. Thomas. Caring for you for every season of life.
With the latest from around FCHS and Rebel Nation.
The Rebel Report, every weekday, presented by Oaklawn Baptist Church, right here on ESPN Radio Winchester.
Welcome back, Rebel Nation. I'm Lucas.
And I'm Laura. We've got an exciting postseason edition of your Rebel Report, so let's jump right into it.
Starting on the diamond with our Rebelette softball team, who closed out their regular season in a huge way this week. They took on Shelbyville and absolutely dominated, winning 12-0.
This wasn't just any win, it ended in style. Adeline Carter sealed the deal with a walk-off home run to bring the game to an early finish. Now that's how you head into postseason with momentum.
No doubt about it. The Lady Rebels are heating up at just the right time, and they'll kick off district tournament play this Thursday against Marshall County. Best of luck to them as they begin their postseason run.
Now shifting over to Rebel Baseball. These guys are also getting ready for some postseason action. They'll open up their district tournament Thursday as well with the matchup against Tullahoma.
That will be played at Lawrence County, who's hosting the tournament this year. The Rebels have been working hard all season, and now it's time to see that pay off when it matters most.
Let's talk soccer now, where things are still a bit up in the air. The Rebels have 2 big games left that will determine their district tournament positioning.
They'll hit the road Wednesday night to take on Warren County, then turn right around and host Shelbyville on Thursday. 2 critical matches with major postseason implications.
And here's the situation. Depending on how those games shake out, the Rebels could be looking at a quick turnaround. If they fall outside of second place, they may have to jump right back into action on Saturday for tournament play.
So definitely keep an eye on those results. Every goal and every play is going to matter this week.
Finally, let's head to track, where we've got some impressive numbers to report. A total of 31 Rebel athletes have qualified for the state sectional meet.
That is a huge accomplishment. Those athletes will compete for a chance to advance to the state track meet next week, representing our school at the highest level.
We're wishing them all the best as they continue their season. Keep pushing and representing the Rebels with pride.
But that's all we've got for today's Rebel Report.
Good luck to all of our teams this week.
And as always, go Rebels.
Located at 108 Memorial Drive in Winchester, Oaklawn Baptist Church is a place where families grow, faith is strengthened, and students are encouraged to live with purpose.
You are now experiencing Unleashed with Chewy on ESPN Radio Winchester, presented by Burl's Termite and Pest Control. Please stand by for your regularly scheduled broadcast and enjoy the show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Unleashed with Chewy. Joey Ram jumped in the chat saying that his brain has grown during this show. To a degree, perhaps. You could definitely have some new neurological connections being made in your mind. All right. I want to jump onto a topic that's sort of near and dear to my heart. Mostly not because for any reason other than the fact that I just find it absolutely absurd. I remember a while ago, probably around in high school, when I was watching a seminar about color theory, and it was me sort of discovering the fact that I was colorblind. And my brain sort of attached itself to color and what it does and why it's interesting, and this is where we get on to chromatophores and that kind of thing. But my point being, I've never liked the color blue. And I've learned that, number one, yes, I actually can see the color blue. Maybe not as vibrantly as some other people, but like I can tell you that this is blue. I can tell you that the FC is blue, you know? And I don't need like context colors. A lot of my problem is I have to have a context color to tell you next, like if you put a gray next to a light green, I'm like, oh, there it is. But point being, I want to tell you something about the color blue. Now, how many people are listening? That's actually their favorite color. And how many people listening do you know that that is also someone else's favorite color? There's some people who love this color so much where it's like they only want to wear this color. Joe Abraham likes black, and he only wants to wear black. He wants black things, and he wants to have a black truck and black shoes and black shirts and those kinds of things. See, look at him right there. But some people have the same thing with blue, and it always got on my nerves because I never liked the color blue. And I always thought to myself, hey, the only reason you like this color is because it's hard. It's like because it's rare. It's like but it's not a real thing. And when I say this, I mean that. Where about, I would argue, 87% of the color blue that you see does not exist. Yes, it is not a real structure. It does not exist, and it is not a natural phenomenon outside of a few very specific circumstances. And this is because it is not something that can be produced by chromatophores or melanin cells. This is a chemically induced color that is produced in some plants and animals, and it is one of the most energy inefficient colors in the entire animal kingdom. Number one, if you think about it, when I say this, right? What are you going to say first? You'll be like, actually, there's blue jays, or don't you? What about this? And what about there's blue flowers, and there's blue lizards, and there's blue. Nope, you're wrong on all accounts. I know. I had the same experience. This thing happened to me too, where you go through here, and then after I tell you about how this works, you're going to go and start thinking about this every time you see the color blue. And what I mean by this is that naturally, what a color really is, it is something that is produced by what's called a pigment cell. And the pigment cells are cells who create these colors. Now, usually, pigmentation cells, they're like reds, browns, yellows. Sometimes if you have crystalline structures based, you can get some greens in there, browns, and like melanin cells, which is like the ones that humans have. Those have the more pinkish, whitish hues, and then you get into like some darker coffee colors where it's in between, and then you get the darker, more melanistic colors towards the equator of like humanity, and it's just this wide array of things. Well, what do you never see? You never see somebody with blue skin. And in fact, people with blue eyes, that's not blue either. Blue eyes are transparent eyes. It is, and it falls into line with a lot of the reason why what we think is blue when it's actually not. There are very few animals, that actually have blue pigmentation colors, and that they will expend that color chemical their energy on. And it is so specific and so rare that that's why it fascinates us as humans. There's a subconscious fascination with the unique. I mean, even video games. What is the most fun part about video games? Is the Easter eggs. What's the most fun part about experiencing something? It's noticing the references, the things, the uniqueness. What do most people strive to be outside of a social circle? They want to stand out. Blue stands out in nature because it doesn't exist outside of a few very specific examples. Joe says he's going to ruin. I'm going to ruin the color blue for all boys 8 through 12. Au contraire, Joe Abraham, I'm going to enhance your ability to not only find it, but appreciate it when you do. So the color blue is basically a lie. 9 times out of 10, whenever you see the color blue in the world, it is a lie. And what do I mean by this? What I mean basically is that it is not something that is naturally produced, rather that it uses physics to push the color onto your retinas. And when I say this, so you look up into the sky and you say, that's blue. Actually, it's not. There is no color of the sky. What you're seeing are the molecules being reflecting and refracting the light that the sun produces. If you go in the middle of the night, you can see the stars perfectly fine, and the only thing that's up there is the moon. And guess what? The sky's not blue anymore, is it? And it's not black either. What you're seeing are the cosmos and the lack of light, and that's actually what's producing it. So when you see it in the morning time and you see, oh, it's the color blue, well, no, it's not. The sky is only blue some of the times. The sky goes red, orange, pink. There are some greens in the sky sometimes. If you're on the ocean, it is not a true color. It is because it follows the same pattern where blue basically cheats. It is a cheated color 9 times out of 10, not always, and we'll get to the parts where they are not cheating. 9 times out of 10, it is a refractionary physics-based reaction of light that you are perceiving with your body or with your eyes, if you can see. And that being said, do we even have real blues? We do, actually, and they're extremely expensive, and we'll get to that. But the whole thing is basically fake. Nature fakes it. We fake it. Most of the blues that you see are all completely synthetically, chemically induced and created, all those kinds of things. Now you're asking, is blue candy real? Yes, it's because it is a chemical that produces that specific color and is not a naturally based thing where an organism did not produce this color most of the time. And when they say natural colors, it's usually a mixture of reds and greens and other things to make a facsimile of what you perceive what blue should be. And that's where we get things like royal blue, blue raspberry blue, like that kind of thing. But it's actually super rare in nature because blue is a structural color. And that's what that would. So when I say a structural color, that's what I mean by it is a light manipulation. Another example for a structural color. Have you ever seen lots of panes of glass, or maybe even thick glass stacked on top of each other? You seen those old Coke bottles? You know how they always have that kind of like that greenish hue? If you look into a mirror and face a mirror towards itself, if you look further and further and further, it induces this greenish dark aqua blue color. And that is basically what a structural color is. It is a color that is produced based on the physics of the object rather than the pigmentation. It's not a naturally developing thing. It's not a chemically induced thing. Light hits the microscopic structures, and only blue wavelength bounces back into your eyes. So your brain is telling you that that's blue, when in reality it's actually something else. There's no blue chemical that's actually sitting in it. Examples of this are blue jays. That's actually brown pigment in their feathers. Morpho butterflies. Those are basically mini mirrors very similar to the ones in chameleons that reflect the light off of them. Peacock feathers, exactly the same thing. Many fish use this trick. You ever see those fish that look like mirrors? Fish can. First off, let's just talk about that for a second. You ever seen one of those things in real life? I haven't. I'd like to, but I've seen them in like aquariums and stuff like that. Jeez, that thing is amazing. Side tangent. Sorry about that. But many fish also cheat this as well. And if you let's say you caught a blue jay or you found a dead blue jay. I ran over a bird on the way to work here, and that kind of ruined my day. I feel bad for that bird, but I hope something else eats it. But anybody else do that? You ever hit an animal and you kind of feel bad about it? It kind of ruins your day a little bit? That happens to me sometimes. But I ran over a bird, but it made me so mad. I was driving down the road, and then the bird, there wasn't anybody in front of me, and I'm only going, I think, let's see, I was right before I pulled in, so I was only going about 30 miles an hour. This bird flies out of a tree, lands on the road with enough time to get up, and just doesn't. And then I just hear a little bump, and I see it, and it's back there. I'm like, man, I don't know if that's natural selection or not. Maybe because I don't know if a car is natural, but that kind of ruined my day. But basically, if you took a blue feather off of a bird and you crushed it up in a mortar and pestle, you're not going to get the color blue. And that's kind of what they mean when they say the color blue. It's like the manifestation of the color will remain regardless of the sum of its parts, where the structure is not what requires the color. It's the other way around. I mean, if anyone else is curious about this, there's lots of other examples that we can jump into specifically about this. But blue is weird, it's rare, and it's not a normal thing. And again, the most important part about this whole thing is that it's physics-based. So when I say that, what I'm saying is the interaction between your brain and your eye are interpreting wavelengths to find a reason to call this thing blue. Humanity does this all the time. There are many cultures where the word blue doesn't even show up until a little bit later on. Doug Garrett says, "You're making my blue eyes hurt, Chewy." Well, you're getting to a good point, my friend. So blue eyes, with what we see in humanity, blue eyes are actually a really interesting phenomenon. So blue eyes are not actually blue. What they are actually is that they are gray, but more specifically, they're transparent pigments on somebody's cells. And it's a rare recessive trait that happens in humanity. So rare, in fact, that if you go back, you can trace the blue-eyed gene to one man in Neolithic Britain who had blue eyes, and every single person who has the recessive trait for having blue eyes made dominant, they can be traced directly back to this one human being that had so many children that now it is infested in other parts of the world where they are not ethnically blue-eyed. This is a thing that actually happened. There was an actual study where they looked at the genome sequencing, and then they also learned on top of this, get this, that the sequence for the blue-eyed in your traits is actually just one sequence off from being a skin color. So there is a universe out there where instead of, when he was depositing this DNA, when it got transferred and absorbed, it went from being an eye color, there's just one small change, and it would have been a skin color. So we could have blue-skinned humans or grayish, bluish-skinned humans. It's a real thing that actually happened when they were sequencing some stuff, and it's actually a gene that can be manipulated. If you want to get really mad sciencey about this, there's something called CRISPR, which is literally editing genes, and this is where people get sort of freaked out, where they start talking about like designer babies and stuff like that. Maybe we'll do a show about that if you guys would like to know a little bit more about that. But your blue eyes aren't actually blue. They're actually gray, or more specifically, they're transparent, basically colors, where brown is the dominant trait, where two brown, and it's so ingrained in our DNA that two brown-eyed people can have a blue-eyed baby outside of that, but basically not the other way around. It's very interesting stuff. So like two blue-eyed people can't have anything but a blue-eyed baby. But somebody with two people with like one with green, one with blue, they can have someone with that, but they won't have brown. Same idea. But two brown-eyed people can have a blue or green-eyed baby sometimes. It's very interesting stuff. Have you ever seen these people? Very fascinating. Even outside of like ethnic lines, where where the human migratory populations did not start out with the blue gene, that they now have the blue gene because of the cross breeding between all of these, of basically humanity since the industrial era. It's very interesting stuff. You should definitely read in on human genetics and recessive traits in the human genome. It's super interesting stuff, and I highly recommend that you go and do that. Very fast. And you know what else it does whenever you do things like that? It shrinks your worldview, and you're like, oh man, that's what we're fighting about? You know, whenever you go and you read about these, like just look up the map of human migration patterns, and it sort of changes your reality a little bit. and you're like, oh man, what are we fighting over? We're fighting over lines that used to not even be there. You know what I mean? It totally turns you into a hippie, which I'm all for. Like if that's what it takes. But look up human migratory patterns, and then also look up when certain traits started popping up. Because if you go back far enough, there are eras where people with blue eyes did not exist. Like that wasn't a thing. But it wasn't a thing. And then there are like even traits nowadays where, like, you know how some people can like actively give themselves goosebumps. That's also a trait that just didn't exist outside of human ethnic groups trading genetic information. And that's probably the most polite way of saying that, whether that be through conquest or courtship. Either way, it's very interesting just to see the soup of recessive genes that have decided to make their way in since the beginning of like humanity sort of taking over. Interesting stuff. I'll get off my soapbox and you can go look that up in the break because we're about to go take one. We'll be back with more after this. Stay tuned to ESPN Radio Winchester, 1340 1069's Unleashed with Chewy, presented on by our friends over there at Burroughs Termite and Pest Control.
Hey Franklin County, when you need quick cash, a new guitar, or that perfect engagement ring, swing into KK's Loans, Music and Jewelry. With Manchester, Tullahoma, and McMinnville locations, KK's delivers fast, confidential pawn loans and the region's biggest selection of new and used instruments, from PV amps to Pearl drum kits, plus sparkling certified pre-owned jewelry in gold, all priced to move. Buy, sell, trade, or borrow, whatever gets you back on track. KK's is a proud sponsor of Franklin County Athletics, supporting every sport, every season.
A lot of businesses think better advertising means spending more money. The truth is, the most expensive advertising is the kind that doesn't work. When your message is consistent, your category is protected, and your advertising works together across multiple platforms like radio, billboards, and digital, all connected to the teams that Franklin County loves, you actually spend less over time. That's why our partners don't just advertise, they own their space. Learn how smart advertising can save you money with ESPN Radio 1340, 1069 WCDT Winchester.
Hey, it's Chewy, and if you've got pests, you need the folks that I trust. Burroughs Termite and Pest Control. They're right here in the heart of Estill Springs at 101 North Main Street, taking care of everything from termites and ants to spiders and those little critters that love sneaking into your home. Burroughs is family owned, they're local, and they've been protecting homes around here for years. So don't wait, swing by or check them out over there online at burrowstermite.com. Burroughs Termite and Pest Control. They'll treat you right and treat your home even better.
For over 75 years, one thing has never changed in Winchester, Tennessee. Hall Furniture has been there through it all. 3 generations, decades of trust, and the commitment to quality, value, and service that still comes first today. As we celebrate over 75 years in business, we want to say thank you to our loyal customers, our community, and to everyone who has made Hall Furniture a Winchester tradition. Hall Furniture. Here's to another 75 years of helping you make a house feel like home.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to ESPN Radio Winchester 1340 1069's Unleashed with Chewy. We're talking about the color blue. It's more interesting than you might think. And, I think it's actually not super uncommon to know that blue has been basically the sign of royalty. A lot of people say it's purple, but it's actually blue. The term purple for royalty actually comes from the fact that the specific royal purple pigment that people were talking about comes from a kind of snail where they had to ground up the shells to get the purple pigment, and it is such a costly endeavor that even to this day it is still one of the most expensive natural pigment dyes in the world, and there's only like one small area where it actually gets made from. But blue literally was more expensive than gold, and this is where the term ultramarine comes from. And if you don't know what that is, it is basically where a lot of older cultures got their blue from. And it only had one source, which was in Afghanistan, where you could get lapis lazuli. Minecrafters might know this. You can use it as blue dye in the video game and that kind of thing. But it literally was one of the only ways to get a true blue. And the way they would do it is they would literally grind up the stones of lapis to produce this pigment, and then that's why you get like the stereotype of like the Afghani carpets and stuff like this, and the textile industry that comes out of the Middle East. A lot of it was built off of the material wealth of these lapis lazuli mines, where they would go and grind up this rock, and the rock would stay blue instead of staying white or turning into white, because a lot of these crystalline structures look white when you have them in the light, but then you grind them up and then it just turns into like white or gray or brown and stuff like that. But ultramarine was so specifically blue that it was like traded across continents. Kingdoms were built on this. Very interesting stuff. Even got into the Renaissance, where artists were often contractually required to use ultramarine in their paintings because the blue signified purity, wealth, divinity. It was often used for the Virgin Mary's robes, and lots of religious art out of the Renaissance used ultramarine because they were specifically told to, because people tied the pigment to certain traits. So specifically like religious ceremonies, like purity, royalty. So there were lots of nobles who were getting themselves painted, and they were told, you can only paint me in this kind of pigment from this place. They were getting, it was so specific that even the paintings themselves, the colors had to, like, this is like, okay, just an example. Like, we think about how wealthy, like grossly wealthy someone is today, but even they pale in comparison to the like over the top sort of obsequiousness that these kind of people back then had, where if they wanted a picture of themselves, you as an artist were not allowed to express yourself specifically. You had to get the most expensive dyes, the most expensive papers, the most expensive woods to make these paintings. Very fascinating stuff. If you want to go back into researching the Renaissance was an interesting period for artists, where a lot of the modern sort of thing was created. I'd love to get an artist in here and just sort of tell me about them, but it's very interesting. But ultramarine was one of the ways that people got a true, and again, it's called a true blue that is different from the Egyptian blue. Now, around 2500 BC, 4,000-ish years ago, 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, first synthetic human pigment recorded was actually created, and it was because humans couldn't invent it. It was literally chemically engineered, and this is one of the first times in history where we have recorded evidence of a chemically created dye to create a certain color. Now, if anybody knows what an Egyptian blue looks like, it's a little bit of it's a more pale blue. It is it's closer to maybe like a worn out denim color. And the Egyptians were originally created, not 3 to 4, 5,000 years ago. This is when this was created, and they were glazing pots in the Middle East doing this 5,000 years ago. So the historical background of what Egyptian blue actually is, it is not like it is from Afghanistan, where it's like this mined mineral where they crush it and they do it. No, Egyptian blue is a calcium copper silicate, or Cooper violate, as they called it, that was first synthesized around 3,000 to 3,300 to 3,100 years ago during Egypt's 4th dynasty, which is incredible to say, like 4,500 years ago. That was only their 4th. There's already stuff behind that. Look at that up. There's like a dam that they found in Egypt that is like way older than like the pyramids, like the first like mega structure or mega project. Well, we'll call it mega project that the Egyptians were doing. I think it was a dam or diverting water, or it had something to do with water, but it's super fascinating. We'll do a thing on that. I can't think of it right now because my head's in blue space. But the dynasty remained until the Roman period, and it was highly valued for its vibrant blue color, which imitated the semi-rare precious stones like lapis lazuli and turquoise. And it was applied inside tombs, murals, statues, jewelry, ceremonial objects, and the production centers surrounded Amun-Ra and Memphis during the Roman era. and then it was also eventually manufactured in southern Italy. But it was basically sand, lime, and copper compounds, and an alkali like a natron or like a sodium carbonate mixture that was ground to a flour consistency and rolled into small balls. They would heat it in a furnace for between 800 and 1,000 degrees Celsius. That's about 1,560 degrees to about 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. And the process produced a glassy blue frit, which could be ground into a fine pigment, and then the calcium copper would basically be distilled into a crystalline structure and then added, making it a chemically and visually unique, where it wasn't going to be broken down into anything else except for more of this blue color. I see you, Katie, behind me. We're talking about blue, but
Bluey?
no, not that one.
You're my boy Blue.
No, the literal Egyptian blue. How there was a first chemically engineered color in human history. Yeah, it's super fat. It's copper. It's mostly made out of copper, and then the Romans got a hold of it.
That's why you see stuff, jewelry, copper, and blue stuff.
There you go. I bet you that. Yeah. That's probably exactly why.
That actress Fairuza Balk?
Yeah. Farouz.
So Fairuza is blue in some language because in the story goes when she was born, her eyes were like that, and her dad goes, Fairuza!
Oh, very cool stuff. Well, it stands to reason because the cultural significance sort of found itself in the Nile Valley with this color, representing divinity, protection over the heavens, and the Nile River. The Egyptian blue was extensively used in funerary art, wall painting, statues, beads, scarabs, and other inlays, reflecting both aesthetic and spiritual importance. And basically, because of its chemical nature, you had to have a scientist to sort of make this back then. Or what I will call a scientist, probably a priest or an artisan at the time, but genuinely, you would have had to been a chemical scientist 5,000 years ago to produce this. And imagine you have a king who everyone venerates and worships as a god and has told himself that he is also a god, and he's telling you, hey, dude, you better come up with some blue before I banish you or anything like that. You might even grow a second pair of arms behind yourself. And then, and so basically, this is what sort of translated the world into believing that purity, divinity, and other things like that came from blue. It was transcribed from its blue pigmentation and its rarity, and also from the Egyptians, who a lot of people don't really realize the Egyptians in the Nile Valley actually set a lot of the standards for modern humanity's preferences, as far as ritual and things like that. It's not just the Indus Valley. It's actually the Egyptians who did this as well. And to this day, we still represent people like the Virgin Mary in blue robes. If you're a Catholic and you have the little candles, you can go and buy these candles. What is she always wearing? She's wearing blues, purples, reds, all very still symbolically chosen colors, where a lot of modern art doesn't go as far, but back then that was the communication language of art. And that's basically that's my spiel on Egyptian blue. But then we're getting into the indigo economy, where the indigo plant, this is one of the few creatures on Earth that actually does have this blue pigment. But it did require some fermentation. It was extremely labor intensive, and it was a colonial trade product. So there's lots of very gross sort of behavior that was associated with this. It is also sort of the foundational dye for a lot of modern textiles like blue jeans and denim. That was originally used. They used a lot of indigo and stuff like that, because eventually it got to the point to where you could make a synthetic and it was cheaper. And that's sort of where we land with how blue is economically. And if you're ever curious as to why like a blue item might be more expensive or something like that, that's why. And that's why a lot of Go back with this information. Go back and look at some art and notice the differences, because we were often raised that purple was a sign of royalty. And that's not necessarily true. The purple was designed, or is not designed. Purple was extracted and used by extreme royalty. We're talking about like French aristocrats, the British crown, the Austrian empires, like those kinds of things, where purple was so specific and so unique and so rare that the accessibility and implementation of them was usually basically only for nobility. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it represents royalty alone. But blue, because of its accessibility early on in humanity, comparatively, usually was the one that was chosen to represent these things. And then even to this day, that's what we still represent them as. And so very interesting stuff. We'll move on from economics. It's not my favorite topic anyway, but I thought it would give you some better cultural context of why this is sort of it's shocking to reveal, like, to think that the topic of the color blue goes this deep. But we'll continue on after this. Stay tuned. We got more headed on. Got to head up into a break here, pay some bills real quick, and we'll be back with more Unleashed with Chewy, presented by our friends over there at Burl's Termite and Pest Control. Stay tuned after this.
Spring is in the air, and so are fresh new savings at Furniture Merchandise Outlet, FMO, right here in Tullahoma. Ready to refresh your space? From living rooms and bedrooms to dining sets and mattresses, FMO has the styles you want at prices you'll love. No long waits, no sticker shock. Just take it home today. Visit them at 105 North Jackson Street in Tullahoma or browse anytime at FMOTN.com. Furniture Merchandise Outlet, where spring cleaning turns into a spring upgrade.
You ever go down the rabbit hole at 2 in the morning and come out questioning everything? That's kind of what it's like listening to Unleashed with Chewy, presented by Burl's Termite and Pest Control. That's right, this isn't your typical show. We're going to be talking conspiracies, space, movies, science, whatever our brains have got spinning that day. Some days make sense, most definitely don't. Either way, we're going to have a great time. Unleashed with Chewy, weekdays from 2 to 4 on ESPN Radio Winchester.
This is Joe Abraham inviting you to join us every Thankful Thursday on the starting lineup. Chewy and I sit down with Winchester Mayor Sean Crabtree, look ahead to a huge weekend in sports, and take a moment to share what we're thankful for. It's a positive way to roll into the weekend. A little gratitude, a little sports talk, and plenty of fun. Don't miss Thankful Thursday every Thursday morning on the starting lineup.
From the 931 Go Weather Center, it's time for an ESPN Radio Winchester weather update, presented by Pennett's Pharmacy.
Showers and thunderstorms headed your way. After our high of 80 this afternoon, we are cooling all the way down to a low of 62 degrees. 90% chance of precipitation headed your way for tonight and tomorrow morning, where you will also be seeing temperatures in the mid-60s. Stay tuned to ESPN Radio Winchester 1340-1069 for all of your wet weather updates.
Looking for more than just prescriptions? Bennett's Pharmacy in Winchester has it all. Grab a bite from our menu, browse our boutique for one-of-a-kind finds, and sip on a Bloody Marty that's worth talking about, all in one stop. Located at 1201 Dinah Shore Boulevard, Bennett's Pharmacy is your unexpected destination for great food, fun shopping, and so much more. Call us at 931-967-2777 or come see what everyone's raving about.
This is Unleashed with Chewy, powered by Burl's Termite and Pest Control on ESPN Radio 1340-1069, WCDT, Winchester.
Ladies and gentlemen, to Unleashed with Chewy. We're continuing our blue talk this afternoon. We talked about the economics of sort of the blue industry, and I don't mean economics naturally. I mean like literally how it applied, and it opens a lot of interesting doors to starting to notice blue in other areas and older blues and that kind of things, and turquoise, and all goes a part of it. All right, I actually wanted to delve into who actually has real blue. Okay, humans don't have real blue. Birds don't have real blue. What is the real blue? Where is it? Where does it exist? Well, I'll give you a few examples of some organisms that actually do have the blue color for real. And this means that it is a pigment that is usually chemically based and produced, and it is something that is not a trick. However, there are many animals that have basically developed a hybrid system where they have the actual blue pigment, and then they will still use structural color to enhance the base blue pigment. And then there are some creatures where the blue pigment goes so deep into their body that if you cut into the flesh of the creature, it would be a turquoise color. Yeah. I will start off, though, that almost everything you think is blue in the animal kingdom, like we said, is structural color. It's faking it. But a few actually go out of their way to do this. And this is usually because it has very specific molecules that are often related to unique proteins or rare metabolic pathways, as in this specific creature has had the right evolutionary pressures to push it in this specific direction, and 9 times out of 10 it never goes this way, but for this specific moment it did. First up being the mandarin fish, one of the only vertebrates with true blue pigmentation cells. And even then, it is a very conservative use of the color blue. Particularly with the mandarin fish, it's got like this long spine on its back, and it's got these long blue, bright blue lines that go across its body. But it's not the whole thing. It's all very small, specific, and one of the most colorful saltwater fish. They have orange and bright yellow spots, like a pale turquoise accent color, and this vibrant, almost what I would describe as an electric blue on their body. Very just beautiful fish with this long. It's also just kind of weird looking. But it's called a mandarin fish, and if you know what it is, you know what it is. It's got a long spine on its dorsal fin. But another one that a lot of people actually know is the poison dart frog, and this is a combination of, like we said before in the first hour. If you remember, I said frogs have chromatophores, iridophores, other things like that, but theirs is more hormone-based transitional color and that kind of thing. Well, the poison dart frog has actually taken a separate avenue where it is actually it's using energy to produce a very bright, obvious blue pigment, but then on top of that, it is also using structural reflections in its cells to produce an even more vibrant color. And this color is used for the obvious. What is it called? It's called a poison dart frog. This is an alert to other animals that I'm a highly toxic individual. So if you ever want to let somebody know, like maybe you're single and you want to let people, hey, I'm pretty toxic, I like to gaslight people, or hey, I'm pretty toxic, like I'll make sure that you never forget about that one thing you did, or things like that. Hey, if you got a toxic ex, give them a blue shirt and they won't know what they're doing. They're like, why'd you give me this? And you're like, it's not for me, it's not for you, it's for everybody else. So go give them a bright blue shirt. And then, let me know this in the chat. Have you ever had a toxic ex? If you have a current who's toxic, what's their favorite color? Is it blue? Do you think that's a coincidence? I don't think so. Poison dart frogs, though, are sort of interesting in this regard as well, because there's actually lots of variants of small frogs that live near the poisonous dart frog. There's also, like, cookie frogs have like really bright orange coloring and different things like that. There is such a thing, though, as several of these frog species that have actually basically mimicked the poison dart frog, the blue ones, and other colors. There's lots of different colors of poison dart frog. There's like oranges and yellows and green. Like there's like one that's like a toxic green, I think. But there's actually other frogs that mimic that color in order to sort of have predators avoid them, because the predators have associated the frog with being a poisonous thing. And usually when a poisonous dart frog, if you spit it out fast enough, you'd probably be okay. But if you're an animal, not if you're a human, if you're a human, don't ever touch it. Don't ever go near it. If there's any kids listening and you see a bright blue frog, don't touch it. If there's any animal that you see that's very bright, just don't touch it. How about we just don't interact with the wildlife with your little fingers, your little gross hands. Don't touch it. Just don't touch it. This is like a puppy, and if you have a blue puppy, let me know about that, because that's pretty fascinating. I don't know how you do that. I want to please bring me the blue puppy. There's some things I would like to ask you. Outside of that, though, there are many frogs that are in the direct environment of the poison dart frog that actually mimic the poison, not the poison, but the color, to basically infer the same thing that they're doing. And so, interesting sort of thread here. As you can see, it sounds like the blue is done for communication. So color seems to be one of the most important communications tool. Blue lobsters. I know some of you have definitely heard of this. This is actually a true blue. This is not the chitin or chromatophores in it that are actually going and tricking the eye and using physics as structural color. No, there are actually blue lobsters, and it's a 1 in 2 million chance of this actually happening, and it is caused by proteins binding to the pigments and then changing how the light reflects off of the chitin. So this is one of those hybrid ones where it's similar to like how the poison dart frog works, but it's a little bit of a hybrid where the structure itself is sort of built where proteins bind themselves to the pigments chemically, and that's why it's such a rare thing, because it's actually kind of a fluke. It's not something that's in their evolutionary repertoire. It's something that's actually I'll call it incorrect, and the reason it's rare is because when you have something that obvious, you get eaten. Joe Abraham says, "Don't pet my Wookiee." There you go. But there was this fish that I was I didn't know that this one existed. It's called the ling cod. I was unaware of this creature, but it's so blue that its flesh is blue. That's right. So the flesh on the inside of the creature has a turquoise color, and it's called by. All right, I've never seen this word before, so biliverdin, and it is a bile-based pigment on the inside of its body that seems to leach into all parts of it. And we're going to look this up together because I want to tell you a bit about this ling cod, and I want to learn about it as well. It is a strange fish, and the blue actually doesn't appear on its body as much as it does its meat. And that is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Okay, so this codfish, when you split it in half, it's got this like mild turquoisey sort of color. It's definitely blue, but not the kind of blue that like a poison dart frog is. More of a paler turquoise sort of blue, and then some of them are more of like a brighter green sort of color. But wow, the flesh is a bright turquoise color. I have never seen anything like that. That is a shocking thing. And ling cod, it's all across the West Coast, all the way from Alaska all the way down to Baja, it looks like, and that's sort of the range. And it says here that they are found in rocky areas at depths between 33 to 320 feet. However, the ling cod has been caught at depths at around 475 meters, which is about 1,500 feet. Tagging studies also show that they're a largely non-migratory species, with them colonizing and recruitment occurring in localized areas only across the western part of the United States. The NOAA fisheries, basically the North Pacific stock and Southern Pacific stock, are where they are maintained. So these are a maintained, known fish, living on the bottoms with eating eelgrass and kelp beds near the shore, and then going into deeper waters for more food abundance, and they only live for about 3 years. So weird stuff. Go on Google right now and look up ling cod meat, and just have your day kind of ruined by this. Very interesting stuff, but it sounds like that's just a small thing. But also, there's one of the most venomous creatures on the planet. And when I say or poisonous, or venomous, excuse me. That one also annoys me when people get those mixed up. It's something called the blue ring octopus, and what that sounds like is almost exactly what you think it is. The blue ringed octopus is a small, about hand-sized octopus. It could definitely, like a full-size blue ring octopus could fit in your hand, but you don't want to put it in your hand because, it's you won't have a good time. It is, let's see here. It is a little yellow octopus, and it's got these rings where just the circle is the blue part, and then it's got a dark circle on it as well, and it is extremely venomous, and they're often found in tide pools and coral reefs in the Pacific and Indian Oceans from Japan to Australia. They also are one of the creatures that have the ability to change their color dramatically, and but they have a powerful neuro and tetrodotoxin, as what it's called. Neurotoxin's obvious, but a tetrodotoxin is a potent kind of neurotoxin, and those are the same kind of toxins that are in pufferfish, porcupine fish, ocean sunfish, triggerfish, and other similar mollusks. If you didn't know, an octopus is a mollusk, so that's why they actually share a lot of those abilities with them. But yeah, those are some of the freaky creatures that are blue inside and out. Stay tuned with us. We're going to go hit a break here and then be back with more Unleashed with Chewy, presented by our friends over there at Burroughs Termite and Pest Control after these messages. Stay tuned. Stick around with us.
Looking for a reliable car at an affordable price? Stop by Money Down Motors here in Decker. We specialize in quality pre-owned vehicles with low down payments and flexible financing options. No matter your credit history, drive away today with a car you'll love and a payment plan that works for you. Visit us at 1945 Deckard Boulevard or call 931-962-3404 for more info. At Money Down Motors, LLC. Your ride is waiting.
This is Daryl from Columbus, previously from the Paul Feinbaum Show.
Check in scissor hands. I'm the wrong guy to ask, but what's the secret to a good haircut?
A good haircut makes you feel confident. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, when you get that haircut, you're going to walk out that barbershop, you're going to look in the mirror, and you're going to be like, yeah, that's it. And you're going to tip the barber.
The Paul Feinbaum Show, weekdays at 3 Eastern on the ESPN app and on the SEC network.
It's time for a local news break from the 931 Go News Center.
More wet weather is moving through Franklin County today as a cold front brings scattered showers to our region. Rain chances will continue through midday and into mid-afternoon. High temperatures are expected to reach only the upper 60s to low 70s. The rest of the work week looks cooler and drier, with morning lows in the 40s and afternoon highs staying in the upper 60s and low 70s, even with sunshine. There is a slight 20% chance of rain on Friday, midday, and about a 30% chance Saturday morning. The remainder of the weekend looks dry, with temperatures gradually warming near 80 degrees by Monday and Tuesday of next week. In Giles County, investigators with the Sheriff's Office, Pulaski Police Department, and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation executed a search warrant at a residence on Fall River Road. Authorities report seizing approximately 84 grams of fentanyl, about 20 grams of marijuana, 2 firearms, more than $8,000 in cash, drug paraphernalia, and a vehicle. Sheriff Joe Purvis said the operation reflects ongoing efforts to remove dangerous drugs from the community. Kendrick Young Jr. was charged with possession of fentanyl and marijuana with intent to sell, firearm-related offenses, and additional drug charges. Allison Griggs also faces multiple charges, including possession of fentanyl and firearms, during the commission of a dangerous felony. And several Franklin County students are being recognized for outstanding achievements. Hudson Boswell of Franklin County High School won first place in the South Central Region Machining Competition. Also at Franklin County High School, Isaiah Brown was named Student of the Month. And Callie Banks signed to play soccer at Motlow State. In Huntland, middle school softball players Sydney Jackson and Lillian Schultz were selected as all-conference, while Jaden May and Riley Maxwell were named Huntland's Male and Female Athletes of the Year. Maxwell also received the inaugural Roland Tippy Tips FCA Scholarship. For more local updates, visit 931go.com. Stay informed and stay connected to your community with ESPN Radio Winchester.
When it comes to caring for your loved ones, choose a name you can trust. Inhabit Home Health in Winchester, located at 2068 Cowan Highway. We're here to provide compassionate professional care right in the comfort of your own home. From skilled nursing to therapy services, our team is dedicated to helping you or your loved ones achieve the best quality of life. Call Inhabit Home Health today at 931-967-0633 to learn more about our personalized care plans.
Welcome back to Unleashed with Chewy, presented by our friends over there at Burroughs Termite and Pest Control. Joey Ram jumped into the chat here asking, is our blood blue? It's not. I understand why you asked that question, though. But no, when you look down at your hand and you see like the blue arms you see like the blue veins in your hand and stuff like that, your blood has something in it called hemoglobin, and that's a red-based color, and it's also the iron-rich blood in your body. It can change redness, per se, based on the oxygen content in it. But no, what you're actually looking at that has that, it's blue light penetrates, or red light penetrates deeper into your skin than blue light does, and shorter wavelengths of blue light are scattered back into the eye. So basically what you're seeing is your eye's limited capacity to see further red wavelengths. But no, what you're seeing an optical illusion based on subsurface scattering in your skin. So it's not a thing. It's not blue. It just looks blue, and there's nothing that term where people are like, well, it's actually always blue until it oxidizes outside of your body. No, that's not the way it works. It just doesn't. And you can literally, if you have ever watched science-based cadaver videos or anything like autopsy or something for students, often they will dye the veins in their body, and it still looks blue on the outside. So it is red, and it has always been red, and it will be red. But it's a strange oxymoron. And actually, Stan Winston, who is a fantastic VFX artist for the movie industry, doing like makeup, creature effects, and stuff like that, he actually sort of opined on this one time, talking about how the blue that you're seeing is actually a lot of the green in your body whenever making human skin tones for that kind of thing. It's actually a green color that you want to grab because that's the color that people are associating with, and it's just wavelengths not meeting your eyes correctly, or your brain your eye not being able to interpret the wavelengths properly. Like, we are blind to certain wavelengths based on that, and that's what that is. But sort of a round out the hour here, I wanted to know, like, why are humans so weird about blue? Why does it pop up everywhere? Why do we have color theory about it? Why am I talking about it for so long? Number one, it's just interesting, but it is also part of our daily life. So blue lights are shorter. They're easier for us to see. It's one of the first colors you're going to notice, the color of the sky. It's the color of water. It provides safety, hydration, survival. So subconsciously, we are hardwired and encoded to recognize the color blue as a positive color. We associate it with positivity most of the time. Again, not everyone, but that's how it works. So it's a neurological response that we say with trust, stability, and intelligence. To the point, I talked about this morning, where when I was doing 60% pick in college games, if their mascot or their primary colors were blue, more often than not, even if my other parameters were different, I would actually pick them to win, because they've noticed in studies, people who are on a team with blue colors tend to speak to each other and connect better as a team, versus red, which incentivizes collective aggression amongst them, where they're more aggressive, but the blue win more on team-based exercises because for some reason the psychological profile of the team changes whenever you have them be blue. And this is why it dominates things like tech companies, banks, hospital logos, these kinds of things. You'll always see something where it has these colors. It's because it does that. Fast food chains often have red and yellow in their marketing profile. Think about it. Wendy's, McDonald's, KFC, In-N-Out, what's another one? Hardee's even has these reds and yellows. It is because it psychologically is attuned to your brain and is working on you subconsciously to attack those parts of your body or those parts of your neural matrix to incentivize you to go and eat at these places. And blue does the same thing for humanity as well. It's not as aggressive as yellow. It doesn't feel cheap like red and yellow are. It doesn't feel unstable like sometimes orange can be. It's a safe, solid, controlled color. But why, though, blue food triggers us? Think about this. Well, it's because blue is basically unnatural. So you remember like when those blue Takis came out and everyone was like, what's going on? You know, a Burger King's great example. If you this whole idea, not just the color blue, go look up color, like specific things like this, like color in marketing, and how it will actually influence people. Like these mega corporations, how they're like, everything is thought of, every action we do is like planned and done like this. Even the color choices, the hex codes on your vibrant marketing are part of the marketing because they're attacking you neurologically. Blue is also, but like so moving on from that, blue actually triggers the opposite response in consumables. If you notice, blue is usually associated with electric, raspberry, things like that. There's no blue foods. Anything that you say is a blue food is not blue. Blue is created by an edible blue pigment color that's added to the food. So you've got like the Mountain Dew Voltage or the blue raspberry, the blue Takis even. And usually it's not something that people were doing originally because we associated blue with negativity, like things like rot and like molds and greenish, grayish hues were coming from unsatisfying things. And so every time you see a blue food, often it's like a candy or something where it's like, this is extreme voltage, Mountain Dew, Takis, hot fire, where it's the selling point is the fact that it is unnatural. And that's where it comes back around, where blue is most people's favorite colors because of the psychological advantages of having the sky be blue, the world be blue in general. We call the pale blue dot, like that kind of thing, but also because of its rarity. So I hope today's show sort of opened your mind a little bit on not just color theory, but just in general, just starting thinking about weird things and why. It was more of just a deep dive into why I found the color blue to be fascinating personally. There's an ongoing joke. We've mentioned it on the morning show, and if you know me personally, you know that I go into these hyper fixations on certain topics, and one of them happened to be blue. And we started off with chromatophores, and here we are. Your favorite color is blue because of that. Go back and watch the show. It'll give you all your answers. I appreciate you guys here sitting with me this afternoon. I hope you all had an absolutely wild ride. I know I did. I knew it was super riveting. But, hey, maybe it made you think about the color blue a little bit more. Maybe it made you think about animals and nature and stuff like that. Go try the feather technique. If you find a blue feather somewhere, go put it up to the lights and wow some kids with that. They always get a kick out of that. So enjoy yourself. I will be back same place, same time tomorrow. And then Joe Abraham, so last thing, Joe Abraham said, Blue Man Group, Blue Man Chew, Blue Chew. The Chew knows blue. Absolutely. We'll get more Unleashed with Blue Chew here. Sponsored by our friends over there at Burroughs Termite and Pest Control. Same place, same time tomorrow. I appreciate each and every single one of you. Stay tuned to ESPN Radio Winchester. We got more coming up for you after this. I'll see y'all later.
It's now time for your obituaries on ESPN Radio Winchester, courtesy of